If you're a Kiwi, like me, you have a 1 in 7 chance of experiencing some kind of depression by the time you have your 25th birthday. That's a stat that has come out from UNICEF the last few years, and it puts New Zealand the highest in the OECD. It also says those numbers are higher still if you're female, and they're higher still if you're from Māori or Pacific background. But I think we've been looking at things the wrong way. There's a better way we can look at this. I myself was a part of those stats between the ages of 22 and about 26. At the time, I saw the whole experience as this big, bad thing and was very scared of it. And in the time since, I've had to work really hard to figure out what works for me in terms of building wellness and staying well. At the time, above and beyond everything else, I even started to get the feeling that the experience with depression was changing the way I viewed myself deep down. And I did not like that. I went from being this life-loving, driven guy to being unable to get out of bed before 11. From being this rational thinker with a relatively calm mind to being totally dominated by my feelings and impulses, unable to control my thoughts and with a tendency for them to rest on the negative. When I was a bit younger and I'd ask those core questions about who I was and how I served the people around me, right down to the fundamental level, I always saw myself as somebody that brought a lot of drive and enthusiasm to the world around me. Not bouncing off the walls, annoying, enthusiastic, but just a good, decent sort that didn't care too much about the pains that life threw, would take it, be happy with it, move forward, because this was still a big, beautiful planet. When I discovered the usual resources that are out there, and they're wonderful resources, such as Sir John Kirwan's depression.org.nz or the Mental Health Foundation of New Zealand, it was by no means an easy task, but I did what I could, pulled my socks up and got myself to what I say is about 90% of the way well, by doing the things they say you're supposed to. And they're things we all sort of know really, like making sure I'm getting enough exercise or meditation. But I didn't feel I got that last 10% and got comfortable and, dare I say, a bit lazy with my wellness until I brought into one quite simple idea. And that is that my mind and my life and my world, it all moves and migrates in the direction of whatever it is that I give mental energy and effort and grind and love, essentially, to. I bought into that 100% and thought it was a cool thing to do. Still do. And so naturally, the next question that came to me was, well, if that's how I think things work, then why would I ever put my mental energy into anything other than the constructive? And so, to what I've done over the last few years. A mate, Eve McFarlane, and I have gone around New Zealand and interviewed a whole bunch of young Kiwis, impressive young people, and in the past they've also experienced youth depression. So we wanted to find these people, meet them, interview them, get to know them and figure out what are the things that they've learned in the time since that help them stay well. What are their wellness tools? When we looked online, I found a whole lot of stuff about how bad New Zealand's national stats are, but not a whole lot of stuff about things that people have done to recover, or at least things that others say have helped them recover in the past. With our project, we've been very deliberate not to imply causation and say that this stuff is a fix. What we want to do is compile a whole lot of stories from other people and get that out there to the community. With all of these people we've spoken to, one thing that struck me, I noticed it straight away, was that none of these people recount their experience with depression in the standard sort of a way that I would have expected, which is something sort of like this. I used to be healthy and happy-go-lucky and carefree, and I was living my life and loving it. And then I got down in the dumps and experienced depression, and then I learned some good stuff, recovered, and got back better again. In my experience, none of them say that. That's not actually the model they think through. They actually say something more like this. I used to be healthy and happy-go-lucky and all of that. And then I experienced depression, and then I had to work really hard and grind my bum off to get into a better space again. Now I have to stay working and grinding and working my bum off to stay well. And admittedly, it gets easier. You get used to it. You get more habitual with what some of the wellness tools are, but it's still a case of daily work. And I've often heard it's a lot like eating your broccoli. You wouldn't have your broccoli once and say, yeah, okay, cool. Now I'm going to be physically healthy and not catch a cold again for the rest of my life until I'm 100 years old. That's not how it works. We know we have to eat our greens every day, and it's just like our wellness tools. We have to use our wellness tools every day. And so, with that idea in mind of why would I ever put my mental energy into anything other than the constructive, the natural next question that came to me was, well, when these people say they're doing work, what are they doing? Specifically, what are they doing when they say they're doing work? Because the answers to that question, that's what I believe we need to focus on. The answers to that question, that's what we've called wellness tools. Wellness tools for building wellness. The beauty of building as a concept is that it's not a state, it's an activity. And as such, it's not dependent or reliant or conditional upon any outside influences or circumstances, factors. It's 100% in the individual's control at all times. Like at any given time, I can stand up, grab my tools, do some building. So that's the core. That's what we've done. And I love what we've found. As I say, it's not causative. We're not sitting here calling ourselves experts on mental health. We've turned our project into a website, a podcast, a book, but we don't call ourselves authors because we haven't authored this thing. We say we've compiled it because we've just compiled stories from other people about things that work for them. What I really love about this, though, is some of the heartwarming stuff that we've found. Our project is called How We Got Happy. Stories of health, hope, and happiness from 20 young Kiwis who beat depression. I always tell people about it, and they always say, yeah, okay, cool, so what's the thing? What's the one thing? What's the fix? And all I can even say is, well, there's no one fix. We're all so different. We're all the same, but we're all so different. There's no one silver bullet. And I think that's quite cool. What is really great that we've seen here, though, is that there are some commonalities. So while there's no one thing that works for all, there are some things that work for people. And quite a few of these things work for a lot of people. So whereas we see these stats coming out saying that we have a 1 in 7 chance, and that if we're rural, if we're female, if we're Māori Pacific, it's worse and worse and worse. What's not said is that if we're a person that identifies as having a strong faith, well, our stats are even better. If we're a person that sticks to a structured routine every day, our stats are even better. And if we're a person that feels they have a trusting support network, some people with whom you feel comfortable talking about anything, I mean anything, your stats are even better. I'm fascinated by the various approaches to wellness that are taken by different civilizations around the world, because they're all talking about one thing: human well-being. One of the Western world's leading models comes from the UK, where researchers have shown a positive correlation between increased mental health and their 5 ways to well-being. Connect, give, keep learning, take notice, and be active. Indian culture has its own model that says a healthy person is like a house with 4 rooms: spiritual, emotional, mental, physical. And that in order to stay a whole, healthy person, we must spend time inside each room every day, even if only to keep it aired out. And half a world away from India, here in New Zealand, Māoridom has its own cultural model: Te whare tapa whā, the house with 4 walls. And it says the house can only stay standing if all 4 walls are strong. Taha wairua, the spiritual wall. Taha whānau, the social, emotional wall. Taha hinengaro, the mental wall. And taha tinana, the physical wall. I'm fascinated by all of these models, and I think there's so much to learn. So while there are these stats saying that New Zealand is the place that has the highest rates of youth depression in the OECD, my perhaps naively optimistic mind sits here and says, yeah, okay, maybe, surely it's also the best place with the most people coming through the other side. Surely it's the best place to learn the best lessons. It's got the most people coming forward, learning the good stuff, the good tools, and coming out, recovering from mental illness as well. Surely it's also ground zero for the positive stuff too. It's like if I was a kid and I was sitting there with God before he sent me down to earth to live out a wee life, and I was just mad about soccer. And he says, where do you want to live? I'd say, send me to Brazil. You know, that's the place. That's where you can be the best soccer player. Sure, the competition would be seriously intense, but that's where you can grow up playing against the best and then become the best. Same thing. If I loved film and cinema, send me to California. If I loved ballet, send me to Moscow. Well, I'm of the same mind. If I wanted to learn lessons on wellness, send me to New Zealand. This is it. This is the place. There is nowhere else in the world that is learning more lessons on wellness than New Zealanders are right now. One beautiful little experience that I had was a conversation a couple of months ago with a friend who was helping us put this project together. Tony had just come on board. So I gave her a copy of the book we'd produced and said, this is the crux of what we've done. It'd be cool if you could go away, read that, and get the vibe of what it is we're trying to do here. So this is on a Friday night. So I speak to her the Monday morning, we're having a catch up, and she tells me she's gone home that weekend. She wakes up Saturday morning, she's in the slippers, walking around, makes herself a cup of coffee, grabs How We Got Happy, sits down, expecting to flick through a couple of pages while she's enjoying her coffee and then dive into the day. What she tells me is that it was 4 hours before she got up. She sat there, she read through the entire thing, cover to cover. And it was not photo reading, not speed reading, it was word for word, slow reading, taking it all in. She said she was inspired, she was moved. By the time I spoke to her on the Monday, she had signed up for yoga lessons. She had this awesome energy about the way she was speaking. It was wonderful. And then she said one of the most beautiful sentences I think I've ever heard. She goes, you know, in reality, I think throughout everyone's life, everyone probably experiences a little bit of depression. And to me, I just thought, wow, this massive internal smile. The reason I thought that was so beautiful is that it suggests to me that inside her own mind now, she no longer sees the whole topic of mental wellness and illness as this big, scary thing we can't talk about. If and when need be in the future, she's now comfortable talking about it without the fear. And in addition to that, what's so great is that because, as we all know here in New Zealand, talking about this stuff is one of the biggest things that can help us stay well. Her wellness will be that much better off future weeks and months, years. Look at a vision. As lofty as it might sound, I know it can be a reality. It's 15 years into the future, so it's 2035. I've just had my 45th birthday. Reach into my pocket and I pull out my new iPhone 27, open up a tab, and read out the latest headlines. The stats are in. New Zealand is now the country with the best, the lowest mental illness rates on earth. The fact is, some country has to be. And with everything we've seen going on the last few years, the grassroots groundswell of wellness learnings that's going on in our communities right now, I know that can be a reality. I have a challenge for you. It's no big deal. In fact, it might even be quite easy. You can do it sitting there right now, or later when you're walking the dog, or having a cup of tea. I challenge you to take a look at your view of the whole topic of mental wellness and illness. Bring it out onto the workbench of your mind. Dust it off, tinker with it, and ask, could it use any reworking? Maybe it couldn't. Maybe you're totally across it. Maybe you've got a healthy view that allows you to engage in a comfortable way and to be there for loved ones if they're struggling. Maybe it couldn't use any reworking. Or maybe, as was the case with Tony, it could.